at least initially, is let's call it the legacy of cyberspace. And so the legacy of the idea itself of cyberspace, which puts the internet and internet research into a particular context. A lot of the questions, a lot of the work that was done was kind of based on or grounded in this idea that we need to know whether it is or it is not a world apart, or does it function differently. It's all about difference. And so what I'm doing is so the second era of research was a debunking exercise and then also an empirical exercise to say that it's not a world apart, that there's relationships between the real and the virtual, and a series of different kinds of relationships. And so what I'm doing now is identifying a series of research practices and trying to invent some as well that is no longer, if you will, obsessed with the real-virtual divide. Rather, taking the internet as something really normal, as something that is a source of a wealth of data, and not at the same time being, making sort of, saying that it can answer everything, but rather showing what it could possibly answer. So then, one by one, what does the history of a website tell? Can we create techniques to capture it and see whether it's telling? This was the time-lapse photography. What do links tell? What do links show? Can you get an idea of the status of an actor or the reputation of an actor on the basis of the kinds of links it gives and receives? What can you do with engines, etc. Right? But this is the program, and it's not. I mean, it's trying to say that the work until 2007 was highly productive in either establishing or then subsequently debunking the real virtual divide. And I'm arguing that we can move on from that.
But still, I think your question is very important for us because we are in a place which is not natively digital. I mean, as you can see by the complete archaism of our technical installation. So we need to we have to graduate from, and here the question of calibration is very important. So I understand the idea. I mean, for the natively digital like you, the question of calibration doesn't raise because there are so many interesting things in situ, so to speak, which are homegrown. But it's still a problem for us, and it's one of the problems to argue for this media lab here in Sciences Po vis-à-vis the more traditional survey. I mean, I'm not even talking about virtual, but people who pass a questionnaire and do survey. So they say, yes, but where is your calibration? And it is an important question. I think the last question will be this gentleman there, except if you want to answer mine. I mean,
yeah,
what do we do when you are
the question? No. But let's be really clear. We are precisely dealing with the question of calibration and with the question of the ground. That is the question. Right? That because of internet data, we are continually confronted with the question of where the baseline is and should be. And so it is the baseline itself, or the idea of where the calibration is at issue. It's not that there's a simple answer. Yeah? So it's not saying, well, it's always here or always here. Previously, and I'm talking in terms of internet-related research. Previously, what we had was two different baselines. We had a sort of full virtual world, and then a real world against which to see whether or not how virtual that other world was. Yeah. So now after we've finished that project, if you will, what we see increasingly is that the internet sometimes comes last as the place to check whether something's true. This is the point.
This one is going to get married, so I think this is the last question we have to ask.
Okay, so last question. Obviously, we're here today for the opening of the inauguration of the Sciences Po Media Lab. You've mentioned a couple of other media labs, or there has been mentioned a couple of other media labs today, Toronto, MIT, and you yourself mentioned there's a third wave of research that started in 2007. And my question is, what type of research, what will these media labs yield? What is your expectations for the production of these media labs that are emerging with this third wave? Because I think it's something we're all asking is, what are we going to do with this tool that the media lab is going to be at Sciences Po?
Wow.
That's a good last question.
Yeah, very good. Well, I mean, you know, I'm quite interested in different ways of filling in the notion of a lab. Yeah? I have a lab at the University of Amsterdam. I call it the TEM lab, which is Temporary Experimental Media Lab. That is to say that the teams are constantly changing, the subjects are constantly changing, as we get expertise in order to follow what the argument here is what we need to do is in fact follow the medium, and one of the principles that I would put forward for Media Lab practice is to put the conditions into place that you can actually follow the dynamics, follow the dynamics of the medium. And I myself add to that if you're in the position to follow the dynamics of the medium, you're also in a position to also capture them, to store them. The question is, how do you share? In science, there's always a huge question of whether or not you're going to share your data. All of our tools, the data sets are available online. You can use anyone's data. So that's another very important aspect of whether or not one builds in, if you have mechanisms in order to capture and store the dynamics of the medium, are they available for research elsewhere? I think that's the difference between a lab and a kind of, I don't know, a media lab and another kind of lab. I mean, you see many of the studies that come out about networks in science and in nature. I mean, there have been a few recently. All those data sets are just data sets for those researchers only. They're not shared. They're not in sort of collaboratories. And so I think there's the big agenda about what a media lab does with the data it collects, and how it whether or not, I mean, if there's a policy, or if there's no policy, or if there's at least a spirit. I would like to put forward that at least one item on the agenda is the spirit of sharing data.
Well, Media Labs on the whole world unite. And with this, thank you very much to Richard. It was a fabulous start for our project. And again, he came just for the afternoon, and he gets married this week, and he gets the whole family. So we are very pleased that he took the time. And thank you again very much.
Thank you very much.
So for those of you who are patient enough, at 7:30 there is a discourse.